Yes, people, welcome back to the Backpacking Psychonaut. In today's episode, we've got a very special guest. So, Arran, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. I've been looking forward to this for some time since we met a few weeks ago. You told me about your podcast. I'm like, get me on there. It's been a while since I've done something like this, and always happy to chat with you, mate. Always entertaining discussions.
For sure, me and Arran met at like a networking sort of event, and we did like a mini podcast eating some steak, and I thought I might as well transfer this onto an actual podcast and give some enlightening information to the people. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, mate.
Yeah, we talked about all sorts of stuff. We were really the spectrum on that day, but yeah, whatever we get into today, we'll get into.
For sure. So for those that don't know, Arran, why don't you just describe what you do for a living, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. So for lack of a better term, I'm a YouTuber. I think that term has some interesting connotations, the way that people perceive it. I would hate to be known as an influencer. I just think that's the worst term ever. And YouTuber isn't too far behind, but I think what I do on YouTube is rather different to what most people perceive as a YouTuber. Most people think about YouTuber, they think of MrBeast. They think of doing maybe 4 videos a month, super high quality effort, getting hundreds of thousands or millions of views a video. The kind of like quality over quantity approach. My approach is different. My channels are smaller. I talk about sports news across 3 different domains. Formula One is the most recent one. So basically sit in front of the camera for like 10 minutes and just chat about what's happened for the last day. It's a simple idea, and I just talk about things that I'm interested in and I already follow and I'm a fan of. And that seems to work very well from the community perspective. So I've had the 3 channels for a little while. My first channel, which we'll get into, I started about 5 years ago. And the concept is pretty much just, if you want to get 1 million views a month, which will translate to a pretty decent paycheck on YouTube, you could either make 1 video a month that gets 1 million views, or you could make 50 videos that get 20,000 views. And there's a debate as to what's easier or harder there, but I found the latter has worked very well, even though it's a non-traditional model for what people tend to do on the platform. So yeah, that's a bit of an introduction. I went to university in 2017, wherever it was, in Bath. I now live up in Manchester. I worked for Intel, the chip maker in Swindon, for a year. It's more like 6 months before the pandemic happened. And the pandemic was a blessing and a curse in some ways, because it ruined YouTube revenue overnight. But it gave me a lot more time to actually pursue that and realize that after I finish my degree, I don't want to be going back and working there again. So yeah, that's a brief background on what I do today, Alex.
For sure, I think there's this concept with becoming an influencer where like people think they have to be mega famous, like the 1 million subscribers, 10 million subscribers. But because the vastness of YouTube and the internet, there's a pocket of that part of the internet that you can find, you can offer value to, and you can monetize. And I think if you can do that successfully, you can be a big impact to a small amount of people, but still get revenue from that and make a living from it. So I think what you've done, Arran, is you found a system and you figured out how to convert that into different sports, and it's really admirable, mate. I go through your YouTube channel yesterday. I told you before, I really admire the consistency that comes with it, and that's something we'll get into. But my first question is, like, what made you want to start YouTube? Was there a reason for you going down that avenue, or was you just an avid like YouTube follower?
Sure, yeah, I can do the journey. And just to touch on quickly what you said before, it's absolutely true for a lot of people that might be listening, that you can have the smallest niche in the world. And if you're the best at doing that, you will be rewarded relatively handsomely. Doesn't matter how small the niche is. If you're number 1 in the field, which is what I try and be and what I do, and what my intention is for the next few years, then you'll be in a good spot. For me, I used to make YouTube videos since I was a kid. I always liked making content. I mean, I used to have a channel that did, I used to do magic tricks on the camera when I was a kid, like card tricks and stuff. And my parents, they wouldn't let me, or my dad, I printed out the entire YouTube monetization agreement, and he thought it was a scam, so he wouldn't sign it. And some of the videos on those channels popped off me, I'm telling you. Like, it's just me in my hands or whatever. And they got, like, across all the videos, got, like, millions of views. You can still find them all, but I'm not going to link it to everyone.
I'm going to dig that down and give it to the people.
Like, you could do your best. I can obviously send it to you. I'm not, like, embarrassed or anything. Otherwise, I would have deleted them. I'm kind of impressed, actually. So I did that when I was younger. And then I used to just I got into Call of Duty when I was, like a lot of people did. I got what was I, 11 when I got the first one, Black Ops 1. And like Black Ops 2, kind of around that time, I started making some gameplay analysis videos. It was they got a few hundred views or something. It wasn't anything spectacular. I think I had about 400 subscribers or something on the channel. And it's the same channel, and all the videos are still up. You can go back and look at what the old days used to look like. But then I was finishing college when I was like 16, 17, and I was a competitive swimmer at the time. I still love swimming. But I was swimming quite a lot, and I didn't have time for everything, right? Like, there was only a certain amount of things with A-levels and all this. And then I went to uni, and the first semester of uni was pretty class. I mean, I was kind of doing well, maybe socially, as in I was partying and having how it is. And also hitting goals in terms of what I was actually academically doing quite well, like I did in school. And then second semester was an absolute shambles, because I think I realised that none of this shit matters for the first year. You don't get graded on it anyway. And it just became a complete mess, especially during winter. Like, my sleep schedule was completely ruined. And some nights I was like, all right, I'll survive through the night and I'll make it to the morning and I won't sleep and I'll be good. And I would be playing Fortnite with my mate from Scotland all night until like 8 in the morning. And then I'd be like, somehow I'd end up falling asleep and I'd wake up at like 3. And my breakfast would be literally dinner. My mate would come up downstairs. I'd have texts from some group meeting that I was meant to have gone to at like 10 that day. And I obviously slept through the whole thing and had all these messages. I was like, I don't care. So it was a complete disaster. The only thing that kind of got me to get up was I followed the Call of Duty competitive scene. I had done for a few years. I watched the players play. I followed the storylines. And I was kind of part of the community. I was just a fan of the community. And I wanted to get involved in it to some degree because I saw people writing articles, like journalists. And I was like, all right, what if I am a journalist? 'Cause I'm quite good at writing and stuff like this. I was doing business management stuff at university. So I thought, why not give it a go? So I started writing these with a couple of other guys, like a weekly newsletter it was, on the Call of Duty competitive subreddit. They're all still there. It's called Weekly Recap. And it was the only thing that could get me out of bed on a Tuesday. I'd actually wake up on time on a Tuesday-ish, because I knew I had to get this thing done by the afternoon, because people wanted to read it. I didn't get paid anything for this, of course. It was just a service to the community. And I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I took that to... there was a couple of publications that I was writing articles for over the next couple of months. I got paid absolutely zero, but a few people would read it and they'd quite enjoy it. So I thought, all right, like, I know quite a bit about the scene, about the storylines. I know how to kind of weave a narrative and discuss stories. And there was this YouTuber I watched called, his name is Duncan Shields. He goes by Thorin, also known as the Esports historian. Very controversial character. But he did videos on Counter-Strike mainly. But he also made a video, sometimes he made miscellaneous content. And he made a video called My Unstoppable Streak of Uploads. And he talked about how he'd made a video for the last 90 days or something in a row, in all circumstances. I was like, wow. And he was talking about how he'd done it, because he wanted to achieve it. He didn't tell anyone about it, but he wanted to make a video every day for like 50 days. And then when he got to 50, he thought, well, I'll continue. And he got to like 91 or something. And he talked about that it's really not that hard to sit in front of a camera and speak for 10 minutes on a topic you're interested in. So I thought, all right, Duncan, you make a good point. Let me give it a go. Obviously, I didn't immediately start banging out videos every day, but I'd played the Call of Duty Black Ops 4 beta we're talking mid-2018. And I thought, all right, I'll make a video where I talk about what I think about it. Is it going to be a good game from a competitive perspective? So it was just a tiny little face cam of me up in the corner. I looked awful. My hair was terrible. I can't even, but it's still on the internet, this stuff. And you've got to accept, if you want to be a content creator, you've got to accept that your first however many videos are going to be shit. It's just how it is. And you've got to power through, because you've got to start somewhere, you know. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, or whatever you want to say. So I made that video and I put it on Reddit, and people actually kind of liked it. I mean, people watched it. I got a lot of hate. They thought I was an idiot, but fine, you know, it's okay. I read the comments, and then I made one every few days. I started just sitting there and making a video every few days about various topics that were interesting to me. It wasn't news necessarily. It was more like, well, it was related to news, but tangentially. It was more like this thing would happen, and then I'd have a thought about it, and someone else would say something, and I thought, all right, let me make a video on it. But it really kicked off it was precisely the 2nd of September 2018 when I came up with this idea to just talk about all the rumours around roster changes. So after the World Championship ends, all the teams change their team, and everyone wants to know what's going on. And it's really difficult, unless you follow the scene very closely and are always on Twitter, to actually know what the latest rumours are. So I thought, all right, let me just talk for 10 minutes about all the rumoured moves. And that video popped off, got like 35,000 views on YouTube. And I was like, all right, I've nailed something here. So I did similar content to that over the next few days. I'd built up maybe at this point a few thousand subs. I think early September I had maybe 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers, something like that, starting the second year of uni. And then it was next year in the January that, actually this is another YouTube channel that inspired me. There's a guy called Agadmata. He's a chess YouTuber. I like chess. It's a cool game. So much beautiful depth to this game. And this guy is a Croatian YouTuber. He's 1 million subs now, but I watched him early days, and he would, like, every day he would talk about a chess game, either one that had just happened or like a classic game, and he would analyze it and talk about the moves and why it's interesting. And a lot of the time it was stories. It was about, you know, this player versus this player and the rivalry and the nations and all this stuff. And he was making content every day, and I was like, well, you know, surely it can't be that hard. And I did pretty well the majority of 2019 to make content pretty much every day. And yeah, that was the early days of the platform as to why I started, Alex. I know I went on a bit of a ramble there. Hopefully that was acceptable.
No, I like it when people go on rambles, Aaron. I think when people go on rambles, they start like discovering things about their journey and putting it into a story. So like, I try and just sit back as much as possible because it's mega interesting to hear how you got from there to here. One thing I found really interesting, mate, is like when you said you came up with the idea to start doing the news. I don't think that idea comes without you sitting down in the first place and doing the work. Like I think you actually have to sit down. And as you said, like your first videos are going to be shit. Like I'm currently in that stage right now where the stuff I'm posting is rubbish, but you just got to keep posting, and eventually you find your pocket. So I think it's important just to know that like the ideas and these like big changing moments that we think like make a difference, they come from all the work beforehand, not just one magic spark of an idea.
Yeah, I couldn't be more true of looking at my channel over the last few years, that you have to just start somewhere. Like my thumbnails today, a lot of people say they're not pretty, right? They're kind of ugly, but they're very effective, and I have a specific style. But man, if you see some of the shit I was making in the early days, and because the iteration, you know, I've made, how many thumbnails have I made in my life? Like 5,000 probably, something like that. Like I made quite a lot. And in the early days, they're all absolutely terrible. And over time, I was like, all right, what if I try this? And maybe I'd even do something by accident when I was making the thumbnail. And I'd change this. Maybe I was trying to make it this color or this color, but I was actually that color looks pretty good. And then you just kind of iterate and discover things. And it's you can't come up with a good idea about something if you haven't given enough bad ideas a good go, you know. This is what it's about. So yeah, I can definitely see that in my journey, that it took me a long time to come up with the kind of concept that I have today. And I don't want to say exactly invented this concept, but in the COD space, I kind of did. I mean, there was people that used to do stuff like this before me. They would talk about news, but they would only talk about like a big team change. Like a team adds a player, they would talk about it for 10 minutes. There was a couple of guys that used to do that, but nobody was doing it like every day as a news show about whatever might have happened. And so that took a bit of time to develop it, yeah.
But one thing I think as well, Arran, is like your natural curiosity and other things led you to creating this like path for your COD channel. So you said you watched a chess person who posted a video a day, and then you watched the other person who was posting videos a day, and you took ideas from other sources and kind of put it into your own personality and your own interest. And that's something I would say for people as well, is like you've got all these interests, and if you put them together, there's lessons you can take from each one and apply them in your own sort of way. So I think everything you do in life, if you do it in a manner that's trying to get the most out of things and you pay attention, it all adds to your personal growth. That's a tangent of what the questions are though. So my next question for you, Arran, is on your journey to 100k subscribers, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned? What do you think are the lessons that you would give to someone who's just starting out?
I would say, we'll talk about consistency probably now because it makes the most sense in the context of what I've done. The 100k has come as a byproduct of making good content for people that want to watch it. The issue that people have is that they think they have a number in mind. I know you're guilty of this, as I was guilty of this back in the day. You have a number that you want to get to, and you focus more on the number than you do on the content. And I have to constantly remind myself, this is why I read all of my comments, at least on the main channels. Formula One, they're too toxic. I can't always watch it. But on the main channel, I read every comment because you've got to remind yourself that there are real people there. It's not just a number. Like there's real people that whose lives you're impacting in hopefully a positive way. So I think that I've learned over time. When I started, I was chasing the numbers, when I got to 10k subs, I was really happy about it. But over time, I didn't care about 100k. I wasn't like pushing for it. I wasn't like, oh, please subscribe, I need to get to 100k. Okay, the plaque is nice. But it was more about just finding content that would provide the most value to people. And over time, the algorithm or whatever will start to do the work for you. I think another lesson I've learned is that a lot of people, when they're trying to make YouTube content, they focus so much on, they use the term the algorithm, and they say, oh, the algorithm just didn't like this video or something. If you replace that word in your terminology with the audience, you'll find yourself in a much better spot. If you make a video that doesn't perform well and you blame it on the algorithm, or you can say, all right, the audience just didn't really like this one. What can I do better? What can I change? And sometimes the algorithm isn't perfect, right? Because a fantastic video can lay dormant for a long time, even if it's well crafted and well created and all this. And the other thing is just to really choose something that people say, some people say follow your passion, some people say don't follow your passion. And I get it either way. Because sometimes you can do something that you're not passionate about, but you're making big money, and therefore, you start to really enjoy yourself, or you at least enjoy making the money, which is fair enough. But if you want to do something consistently for a long time, you've really got to be passionate about what you're speaking about. And YouTube or content creation can be, in many ways, quite simple if you're just talking about a subject that you're fascinated by or a fan of. I don't have any difficulty talking for 10 minutes on the latest stories in these games because I actually follow them. If I tried to make a channel on like golf or football, I have some passing knowledge and interest, but I simply don't have the time or the ability, and people would know I'm fake because I'm sitting there pretending to, know all the stories and like this stuff, but the reality is I don't really know much about it. So that's another key thing. But I think my one lesson is that being very micro niched in some sense can actually work better than you expect it to. I see a lot of guys, they see like Tate or whatever, and they want to make this masculinity content. And I get it, right? A lot of it can be very good content. But you've got to have a spin on it. You've got to have a niche. You've got to have something that stands you apart. Because if you don't, the content's just going to massively blend in. You've also got to have your face attached to it. Because I find this in Formula One especially, that there's more competition doing news in that space. There's other channels that do it, but a lot of other channels that do it are faceless, and they are vulnerable to dying. When I take a break, which I have done in Formula One, we'll get onto the consistency thing in a second, but I can't always do 4 videos a day. Sometimes I'm traveling, and it's been the Formula One video that I do in the afternoon that gets pushed to the side. But people still come back. Even if I take a break, the audience doesn't mind because they like what I'm talking about. If I was a faceless channel with not myself attached to it, if I take a break, and it's quite possible the audience completely forgets who you are. So hopefully those are valuable lessons. You think that was good?
Yeah,
Alex?
for sure, Arran. I think one thing you said, I can't remember the way you said it, was instead of looking at the algorithm doesn't like your content, flip the framing of that and see it as your audience. I think that as a lesson for people who want to start content creation is like invaluable. The content you're posting out is touching people's pain points. It's rather entertaining or touching people's pain points. And if they're not enjoying it, and you're not getting views, there's a reason behind that. It's not just always that the algorithm's doing you over or whatever. You need to improve. And I think that little framing, the way you just switch on its head, is a really good way to look to improve things.
Yeah, even if it is the algorithm that's doing you over, it doesn't help to think about it in that way. Like the best, because you can always improve, you can always be better. And if you were the best version of yourself, the algorithm, even if even if the algorithm was being harmful to your channel, your content would be undeniably good, that it would find the audience anyway. So that's the way that it's better to look at it that way, because people make content, they'll get in a bit of a slump, but they'll have to think, all right, well, if I became the best version of myself here, my content would be killing it. That's what I'm chasing.
For sure. So Arran, you said like you're doing 4 videos a day. What does your daily routine look like? Because producing content is a full-time job, mate. It's hard. I know you said before, like you just sit in front of a microphone and talk, but to come up with the concepts, and obviously you're scanning all the news, you've got to capture all that information. What does kind of your routine look like? How do you block out time to get all that work done and still live a normal life?
Yeah, so it's developed over the years. I think it's William Faulkner. I've quoted this incorrectly previously, but there's a quote that said something to the effect of, "I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every day at 9 o'clock." Because he would always get his pen and paper out at that time. And so if you're relying on inspiration, it ain't going to work. For me, I get up at pretty much the same time every day, and I can bring my schedule forward or back, but I usually get up about 8, something like that. And the first 3.5 hours of my day are just working on the content. And people often will say, it's like, oh, you get so much done, or like, how do you, like, and I don't think I think I get a lot done compared to a lot of people in the same time. I just think during that hours where I'm actually working, I have a goal to get all the content I've got to do done by midday, by lunchtime, and I actually work during those few hours, which is what most people, when they go to work, they don't do any of that. You know, they're taking breaks and all this. But my routine's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's a few steps I've got to do. I batch the content in the morning. Batching is such a big idea in so many elements of your life. If you're the type of person that is at work and you're getting emails and you're responding to them as soon as they come in, stop that straight away. Check your emails a couple of times a day and respond in batches. I do the same for my DMs on Twitter. I do the same for DMs on Discord. Do the same for anything like that. The phone is completely away when I'm working in the morning. And yes, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever he wants to call it now, Elon. So I still see things. It's not like I can completely disconnect from social media, but I don't check my phone in the mornings because it's distracting. So the phone stays where it is for the first few hours. And what I've got to do for my content is I've got to research it, I've got to record it, edit it, thumbnail it, title it, stuff like that. But I'll do it in a batch. So I'll go through all the stuff that's happened in Call of Duty, and knowing what I know over the several years that I've done it, I'll piece together a couple of stories. I'll think, okay, what are the big stories of today? And then I'll piece together all the news, how I want to structure it for that video, and then for the Valorant video as well. And if I'm quick, it takes me an hour to do this, maybe, to get everything ready. All the tabs in Chrome, which is how I do it, all nicely separated and set up. Then I'll record them all batched. So roughly 45 minutes. I'll just turn OBS on. I just use OBS Studio, completely free. I don't have any fancy setup or anything. Like, okay, this camera's decent. It's an Elgato camera. This is like the Shure microphone, but I used a much worse microphone than this for years, and it's fine. Like, it doesn't... People... Actually, this is another lesson, but people, man, they really think that they've got to have the best stuff in the world if they want to get views, and it's really not how it is. If you're an interesting person or you've got something interesting to say, like, you can be on a shoddy webcam. I mean, there's been times where I've been in some hotel room with some very questionable lighting. The video still does as well, if not better, than it does when you've got the good stuff. So yeah, record everything at the same time, edit it all. I do all the editing myself. People say I'll hire an editor, but it's easier to do it myself because it means I don't have to rely on anybody else. Let's say my editor goes on holiday. It's like, well, now what do I do? Well, my thumbnail maker goes away. It's like, especially, let's say I want to get up that day. I've got a flight to catch at 10. So maybe I'm going to get up at 4 in the morning to get the content done. But I can do that because once I'm up, the routine's the same. So yeah, I just commit for those few hours. And I honestly, the routine is just so... All of my mornings are like that. That's what I do every day. And once I've done that every day for like 30 days, you don't want to stop. People say, oh, I'll take a break. Like, you don't need to do it. And sure, I don't. But I want to. And if you do take a day off, then you got to realize that your brain subconsciously starts to say, oh, okay, you're the type of guy that takes days off, are you? And then when you have another day and you think, oh, I'm not really feeling it today, let me take a day off, then you're more likely to do it again because you've done it once. So I know the last day that I missed a day, and it was July the 19th, 2019. I messed up, I made a mistake. There was a tournament that night and I hadn't prepared a video for it. And I missed that day of uploading, and since then it hasn't happened. And I've started to do the same thing with the Formula 1 stuff in the afternoon. So I'll sit down around about 4:30, and just do the same thing again, and then I'll be ready for dinner time. So it works. So that routine works well for me. Some people work differently, but I find that I'm the most sharp in the morning before I've eaten. I don't eat anything until midday. And that's when my brain is cooking, you know. Sometimes at night as well, but that's when I'm most productive. So I think people should play around with maybe make sure your circadian rhythm is on point as well. That's one crucial thing for sleep. But also just play around with intermittent fasting, or when you feel productive, and just work in those windows. Because as soon as I've eaten, I'm sluggish for at least an hour. So I don't want to work in those times. I'm going to be slow. I'm going to be inefficient. But that's what it's about. Because to make the content I make today used to take me hours. I mean, okay, it still takes me hours, but it used to take me a lot longer, you know. Like when I first did it, I was slow, I was inefficient, and doing it so many times has made me quicker, to the point where instead of doing 2 videos in 4 hours, I can do 3 videos in 3.5 hours or something today. So yeah, does that answer the question a bit, Alex?
For sure, Arran. I like the intentionality of you wake up and you get straight to work. You've literally just solved a problem in my brain recently. So I have this massive morning routine, right, that takes me 2 hours, and I wake up, go for a walk, then meditate for an hour, and then I do some Wim Hof, and then I might actually read on top of that, and then I get to my work, or then I go to the gym and then finally get to my work. And by the time I sit down to do work, my brain is fucking elsewhere at that point. It's like it doesn't want to do the work, and it's actually like it's a battle for me to sit down. And I literally had this realization this morning, which you've just reinforced, which is I just need to sit down and do the biggest ROI task for the day straight away. When in the morning, when your willpower's 100%, when you know exactly what you need to do, when you're nice and fresh, do the work. And that's something that I'm going to implement now, is like wake up and just get 3 hours worth of work done, 2 hours worth of work. And if I have to sacrifice other things, that's fine, because that's going to be the thing that progresses my life forward the most.
That's so spot on, yeah. Because I think I've played around a bit with that. People say, oh, like, I'm not saying don't go to the gym in the morning, but I'm saying play around with what works for you. Because if I went to the gym, I'd come back and, okay, the gym can energize you to some degree, but I just like getting out of the way. Because as soon as I've done those 3.5 hours of work and it's like, you know, I'm having lunch and everything, my day in some sense is already a success. Like I've already got my work done for the day. And now whatever else I've got to do, I can get to work on for the rest of it. And I can always go to bed feeling satisfied to some degree. You know, most days you're not going to get everything you want to get done. But the key is to have no 0 days. There should not be a day that goes past where you get nothing of value done. You want to get something of value done, even if it's not everything you want. As long as you can tick some things off the list, then that's good. And to be fair, like the content I make I have like a tracker thing, I track habits, and you know, it's quite good to do. Making videos has long since disappeared off that tracking list because I do it anyway. But initially it was there. And over time, there's other habits that will probably disappear off the list because I do them every day so consistently that I don't have a need to track them anymore. And that's what you want to get to, because if you can do a lot of good stuff on that, then you're an absolute killer.
So, what is your method of tracking things, Arran? Because I remember reading your notes when we was having that stake for all this stuff you track for the Call of Duty news, and you've got these like mad list of notes here. Then you've got all the stuff you're reading from books, and it feels like you're tracking a lot of things for your life and putting them into a system that like it takes it away from your brain. And I think it's really useful for people. So, what's your like method of doing that?
Sure, yeah. So when I went to Intel, we used OneNote. And I know a lot of people use Notion and all this, and I'm sure Notion's good. But OneNote for me works perfectly well. And it's pretty simple. You have different like books or different tabs in it. And I have one for my like to-do list pretty much. And that's the first one. I have another one for the business stuff. I have one tab that is just all the books that I read and I put notes on them. I have one tab that's for like improvement actually, and every month I write down things that I've heard that I thought were interesting. And the way that I structure it is pretty simple. I just have at the top of the page, I have like the highlight of the day, the thing that I want to get done today, whether it might take me 1 minute or 2 minutes to do this thing, but it's maybe a thing that I should have done for some time. Text someone, call someone, figure something out, whatever it is. Highlight of the day at the top. Then below that is the other things that I've got to do. And I have little tick boxes next to them once they're done. And then I do another page break, and then one step below that is the things that I've taken action on, but I'm now waiting a response. So I've messaged someone about something, and it's on them to take the next step. That goes into the next section. And then one below that is like a load of other things that are kind of, there's a concept of a quadrant 2 activity. And in life, you've got things that are urgent and things that are important. And quadrant 1 activities are urgent and important. And those are the things that you pretty much always do. Quadrant 3 is things that are urgent and not important. And those are the things that people spend too much time on and can probably be ignored. Quadrant 2 is what a lot of the rest of the things on my list are. Things that will provide value to me, but I don't need to do them now. And whenever I don't have much on my to-do list urgently, I'll look down at the things that I've got listed below, and I'll just find something that I should probably, have a look at and get sorted. So, I've got written here, like, write a business plan, because I don't really have a proper business plan, but that would probably provide value if I actually put in the time to do that. It might take me a long time. Or I've got to learn a language here as well, which I'm actually getting started on now. Things like that. And then for my business, I have it all tracked where a lot of what I talk about is what other players have said. So they said something on a podcast. When I watch the podcast, I'm taking notes on the podcast. I'm saying, okay, at this time, the player said this. And that could be potentially a star content for a video. And so that's just the way I track it all. And after I've used that podcast or time has passed, I'll archive them all. And this is very valuable because there's times where we've gone to make documentaries on a player's career, and there's something they said 6 years ago in a podcast. And I remember they said it, and it was pretty interesting, but I can't find any clip about it. But guess what? If I look in my archive from all that time ago, I call it legacy notes here, I'll find stuff of them saying something, and it'll say, at 1 hour 12 in this podcast, this player said that he almost quit after this event. And if I'm making a documentary on him, that could be a pretty big deal. So it's good to have all that stuff. So that's what I use. I think OneNote will get all your needs. If you use it properly, you can put everything in there. So that's what I do. And then I also have a Google Sheet that I use for like daily habit tracking. So before bed, I'll go in and I'll just track like kind of cold shower, like exercise. And there's maybe 6-7 things on here that I took, like reading, drinking 500 mils of water in the morning, journaling, stuff like this. I just tick off whether I did it or not. Or at the moment for me, because I'm working on a shoulder injury, I've got like all the different shoulder exercises, like what I did at this time, just to tick them off to ensure that I did it for the day. The difficult thing that I find is not filling it in. It's like actually remembering to fill that sheet in, because I don't have nailed down a time every day that I do it. That's what I need to do. There's a concept that James Clear talked about in Atomic Habits called habit stacking. So a lot of the time when I do one thing, I'll do another thing straight afterwards. So for me, what I need to do is like, all right, when I'm eating my boiled eggs before bed, at the same time as that, I do the daily habit tracking, because I always have the boiled eggs before bed pretty much. So, I won't forget one if I do the other that I do more regularly. So, a few ideas.
Yeah, Arran, I've actually got a book to send you over about shoulder injuries. I've literally just done one in the gym, and It's all about hanging off a bar. So this guy's come up with a concept. He's like the world's leading shoulder injury, and he was saying that if you just hang off a bar, you can literally like rebuild your shoulder. So remind me to send you that book over at the end, because it's meant to be like super helpful.
That's what I've been doing for quite a while. It is the one thing that helps me, because like my shoulder, there's some weird thing, it's misaligned or something like that. If I move it around in a certain way, it will click. This one doesn't click. But if I hang from the bar for like a few minutes, it'll be fine for like until I go to bed, and then when I wake up the next day, it's not good again.
I seem to get it in the.
But yeah, the dead hang is a very good. Well, yeah, I was just saying the dead hang is a really good exercise for you, and it's not even just your shoulders, but it's also for like your spine and for stretching out. Like if you just hang, and also it helps grip strength and stuff. If you just get I've got a pull-up bar here. I don't use it for pull-ups. I just use it to hang from. I just sit there for a try and get like 4 or 5 minutes in different intervals, because if you can hold on for like a minute and a half, you're doing pretty well. But yeah.
Yeah, it's good you taking action on that, Arran, though, because like what often happens with injuries is you don't take action on it, and like this happened to me in my shoulder. I kept going to the gym and kept aggravating it, and it's just got worse and worse. So like as soon as an injury or a niggle comes up, like really take care and pay attention to it, because like without our body we're nothing, without our health we're nothing. So it's important to take action on these things and actually dedicate time to improving them.
Agreed. Next question.
Yeah, right, next question. So why do you do what you want to do, Arran? So like what you do. So you do this Call of Duty channel, you do with the F1. Why do you do all this? What is your bigger purpose? Is it to get you to an idealistic version of yourself? Is it to financially keep yourself free? Like what is the deep reason behind you doing all this stuff?
I think that your work is the most important thing you do in life. And a lot of people don't put enough thought into what they do for a living and also where they live. I think a lot of people don't think about where they live anywhere near enough, given it's such an important thing. And there's lots of options. But what you do is the most important thing. For me, it's about to me, the community is a big part of it. I just love being able to get messages from people and comments that I've made their day better to some degree, even by a small margin. My initial goal, especially on the Call of Duty stuff, was I love this community. I think it's one of the best communities I've been a part of. All the people are when you meet them at events, it's such a sick community to be a part of. And that's one of the reasons why I love what I do, because I'm in some sense like a community figurehead or whatever. You go to events, like people want pictures of you and stuff, very niche, which is great. And it's that, there's some level of ego satisfaction there, which is good. And obviously financially, sure, it's the more lives you impact and the more people you provide value to, the more money you're going to reap in the long run. That's how it works. But for me, it's just about providing value to people and getting comments of people that say, the ones that I especially like are when they say, I would not follow competitive Call of Duty if it weren't for your videos. And those are the ones I really like, because it's people that would do other things with their time. They wouldn't care about the community. They would have just passed on and are interested in different sports or whatever. But because of my content, they're interested in the players. They're interested in the storylines, and they stay involved with the scene, which is the best stuff for me. Now, in Formula One, I'm not going to make that level of impact. People that watch Formula One, whatever. So on that side, it's more like trying to get to number one status in some respect. It's always about, you've always got to have someone you're chasing, and that's kind of what it is. Like the Call of Duty stuff has pretty much got to its ceiling. Everyone who follows competitive Call of Duty knows about the channel and knows who I am to some extent. They might not watch the videos, they might not like them. That's fine. Like, not everyone's going to like them. You've got to understand that. But it's now about, all right, well, can I have the same status elsewhere? And that's the thing for me in the next 5 years. And you can ask this question about, like, what does the next 5 years look like? But I guess I can address it now to some degree. It's about intending to get to, if you think about Formula One news, you think about me and my channel. And rather than mainstream media outlets, because I really don't like mainstream media and Sky and BBC News and all this stuff. I think they do a horrible job generally, and a lot of the content is done way better by individuals who, and you see this with Sky Sports, the amount of people they get on their channels that are basically YouTubers to talk about things, because they know that they need those people to stay relevant. It's like, I want to disrupt that industry. I want to help be part of disrupting and redefining how the media landscape exists in these other sports, because it already is that way in esports. Like, esports is, I think, in many ways pushing ahead of the curve, and it's a questionable industry, and we can discuss that a little bit. But in many ways, the way that the media operates in esports is, I think, the way it will operate in regular sports in however many years. And I want to try and be a part of that change. So, yeah, that's kind of what gets me up in the morning, to be honest, if that makes sense, Alex.
Yeah, it seems like this channel and the stuff you pursue is all, like, it's something that you find fulfilling. It's not done out of a narcissistic way. It's not done out of a self-serving way. It is something that you just fell into naturally because you found passion in it, and you can tell by the way you talk about it, by the way you pursue it with consistency. It's not something that you're doing to chase your own ego. What would you say is, like, your personal goals, Arran, outside of the business? Like, where do you want to be in, like, 5 years as a man, as a person? What is Arran doing? Has he got a family? Has he got a nice car, a nice house? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I'll definitely address that. I will just say quickly on the previous point that I've often thought, if one day I woke up and I was making no money from YouTube, I don't know if I would be able to stop. I think I would have to and do something else in my time, but it would be difficult. It'd be difficult to like get me away from it in some sense, which maybe is good, maybe it's bad, I don't know. But Yeah, honestly, it's a good question because 5 years ago, as I say, I was a complete shambles in many respects. So it's difficult to predict when I'm 29 what the circumstances are going to be. But I do want to be, there's a lot of things that I think I could dial in way more personally, especially on like the training side, but also networking and relationships and things like this. It's difficult to say where I would be because I don't even know where I'm going to be living in 2 years, let alone 5 years. So it's difficult to make a judgment on that. Okay, I think it, and also from like the relationship perspective, it's interesting for me as to what I think the plan would be there. Because 29, I don't have any kids at that point. No way. Like, I don't think so now. But this is the thing. You look back on yourself in the future time and you think, oh, well, maybe things have changed dramatically in the few year periods. But I think mainly it's like, I want to be an absolute demon. Like, just completely on his BS all the time. Because I'm doing all right, there's a lot of things that I do okay, but still, in some areas, I'm not as locked in as I should be, and I can do better in those areas. And I know that I will over time, and it's just about tidying those things up. So it's kind of what I'm doing right now with the habit tracking. Some of those things will become things I do every day, and then I'll bring new things in, and I'll get better and better. I'll start taking training more seriously, and on the business side, building better relationships, I think is going to be a big one, especially moving into the Formula One world. That is going to be big for me. And then, financially is another one, but I'm not so concerned about the financials. To be honest, I don't know how much I like to think about the 5-year destination questions. I prefer to think on a day-to-day basis and then think on a week-to-week basis and a month-to-month basis. I think 5-year questions can not lead you astray. It's good to have a vision. Like, I have a vision for what I want to be when I'm like 40, right? I've got the villa in Italy. I've got the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera, or whatever they're calling it at the time. And I speak Italian, I speak French, I speak Spanish, and you know the rest. So I've got that vision. But the 5-year vision is less clear. And I think it's good for that to be the case.
Yeah, it's what you said. You don't ever know what's going to happen in life, and this person you are now is going to be completely different in 5 years' time. So to have expectations on that sometimes just causes you suffering, because I do this a lot. I think a lot in the future. I look at myself and it's like, I need to be shredded. I need to be getting all the women in the world. I need to be a millionaire, blah, blah, blah. And all it does is reinforce where you're not now. But if you can really focus on, right, today I can do this to better myself. I can do that. And just do that on a week to basis, a monthly basis, you'll naturally find this inclination of things that you want to pursue in life, instead of always trying to attain this idealistic version of yourself. And this 5-year or 10-year version that we think we want to be is often swayed by the influence of others. So I've got this problem at the moment, or it's been a problem of mine recently, where I go onto YouTube and I see all the masculinity space, and I see them driving fast cars and blah blah blah, and I'm like, that I need to attain that. I need to be like Andrew Tate. I need to be like this and that. And that is not something that's aligned with my values. It's just coming from the influence of others. So I like what you said there. Like, just focus on a day-to-day basis. Don't focus too much on the future, and you'll kind of carve your own path.
One of the best compliments that you gave to me, which was much appreciated, although I've really got in a long time, when we were in London and I met you, was you said I'm very present. And I've stuck on that for some time, because I think that I've helped to develop that a little bit in myself over the last few years, to just appreciate what is going on around you. Because I think the path you take in the coming years, I'm not particularly spiritual yet, but I do appreciate, and obviously, we're at probably different stages of our life pertaining to that, but I do think that the universe throws things your way, and a lot of times it's people you meet and maybe it's the case that I met you, and the universe has given me some degree of a challenge to do better here or do better there or whatever. But I think you find this a lot, where you'll meet people in life, and this might happen every few months. You stumble across someone, or something happens to you which seems like a coincidence, and most people would just play those things off, or they meet someone who seems in some way perfect for what they need at that moment, but yet they don't recognize that there's an opportunity there to learn something or to grow. And that's the way I think. I mean, in the next 5 years, the amount of situations like that are going to occur, and people that I'll stumble into, or changes of direction, I think you've just got to be attentive to the things that are happening around you. And because sometimes you'll meet someone and you'll think, all right, well, maybe this is a bit of a challenge that I need to improve myself in this way, and that's why this person happens to have come into my life at this moment. And I'm not as wise as the universe is, let's say, as to where I'm going to be going in 5 years. So don't think about it too much.
Mate, that's really true, Arran. So it sounds a lot like the Taoist philosophy. So the way the Taoists see like life is the universe has got its own flow, and that's what they call the Tao, and everything's happening for a reason. And they have a concept called Wu Wei, which is like step aside from life, stop trying to control things and stop trying to take action on everything, and kind of just let life direct you, and then take action the way life's directing you. And that Wu Wei translates to effortless action, and I'm trying to live my life by that at the moment. It's the universe is always giving you signs, like things are happening in life, opportunities are always around you, and it's just about training your point of awareness to a point where you can realize that and you can be mindful of it. Because if you're constantly stuck trying to be somebody, if you're constantly stuck in your own a perpetual state of thought, you're never going to have the awareness to realize what's happening and what you can make of your current scenario.
That aligns a lot with the way that I would like to live. So that's what it's about.
It's a dichotomy though, because the other part is like what you do, where you set yourself the routine, and like you sit down and do the work regardless. You can get too flowy with it sometimes and not build yourself a routine. So I think, like anything, it's a bit of a balance. You need both. But yeah, go on, Aaron.
No, I think I was agreeing with what you're saying. It's interesting to contemplate. There's an interesting book. It's called... I'll have to just find it real quick. I think it's on... Is it on the books here? It was called The Surrender Experiment. That's right.
Yeah, I've read
interesting
that.
book. That you read that? Yeah. There was some controversy around the author, but I thought it was would be a book that you're interested in because of he didn't know where he was going in 5 years' time, but things changed a lot. By him just letting the flow of life take him where he needed to go. But he still had to put in the work, and this is the thing that people get a little bit too caught up on, especially when people talk about the law of attraction, right?
Yeah.
I think we might have mentioned this on that steak night. But people talk a lot about the law of attraction, and maybe I get it, right? Maybe there is something to that. The idea that if you really, think about things and believe certain, things will come your way. I think a lot of it is attention. It's like, if I'm looking at this Mercedes, whatever car, and all of a sudden I'm like, bloody hell, everyone's got this damn Mercedes around me. Because you're looking at it, you're looking for it. And I think that's partly what the law of attraction is. The better way to look at it, I think, is called the law of affection, which is affect as in to affect people or to affect things. So instead of thinking about it as like, oh, I'm going to attract these things into my life, it's like, all right, how many things or people can I affect positively? And then all of a sudden you get all the value in return. So I think there's people, they don't take as much action as they need to in general. I think we're all guilty of this.
I love that, Arran. That was the law of affection. Yeah, I really like that. It's about what you can offer to other people. It's being like serving others instead of just constantly serving yourself. Arran, there was a question I wanted to ask you about esports. So my idea of esports, and this is obviously coming from a place where it's just an outsider's view, is it's like a mega unhealthy sort of thing that's going on. And I don't know if this is just my self-serving biases, the way I perceive it. And my brother's really into gaming. He always tells me like it's really good. Look at some of the things that are going on in esports. But my mind, the first thing that comes up is it's just people sitting in front of a computer screen for hours and hours on end. That can't be healthy. So where do you think esports is heading? How do you think it can be done in a healthy way? And yeah, that would be my two questions.
It's a very interesting question, and it is one that I I don't play many games at all anymore, and it's a big question as to how much harm it's doing. Because I think to a lot of people it is doing a lot of harm. It's funny, really, because in regular sports, even if you don't make it as a professional player, you've still learned you're still fit, right? You've still done a lot of training, and there's still a lot of things that you can take into the rest of your life, even if you didn't make it as a professional. Whereas if you're playing Call of Duty all day trying to become a pro, there is a lot of things that you learn from a teamwork, from a communication, from a dealing with failure and issues like this. That because in the early 2016, I knew I was never good enough to be a pro, but I had a team. Like, one summer, me and my team of 3 guys, we played like every day. We'd practice, and we got pretty good. We won a tournament actually towards the end of the summer. There wasn't much money on the line, but we got good enough. We beat some Dutch team in the finals, and it was hype. That summer I could have spent my time outside or exploring other things. But I really appreciated that time because it was that process of learning and developing and with a team getting towards actually winning something at the end of it was in some ways very fulfilling, even though we weren't particularly good. I mean, we were like tier 7 or whatever in terms of like how good some of these players actually are. But I do think about that sometimes, like players that nearly make it, they leave the scene and just have to get a normal job without really having the benefits that you find in regular sports. So that is a debate. But fundamentally, gaming isn't going away. The kids are still... You've got to look at what the kids are doing. And the kids are going to be playing games. And that's how it is. So I don't know if I necessarily have a moral perspective on that. But I do think that a lot of people in the esports gaming space, if they're not players, they're not generally playing that many games. Because if you're not getting paid to play the game 8 hours a day, then it's not necessarily healthy to do so. There's other things that you'd be better off doing. And that's just the reality of the way the scene operates. But esports in general is in a really interesting spot at the moment, mainly because, as I say, the kids are still playing games, and competitive gaming is always going to exist from now and into the future in some form. But many of the companies that run the leagues have done a terrible job, especially in the Call of Duty side that I cover daily. Mainly it's because in regular sports, nobody owns the sport. Yeah. Football is anyone can play a game of football down the local park. Like, nobody owns it. Nobody has the rights to that game. And you don't have to pay to play it. Whereas in esports, somebody publishes that game. There's a company, Riot Games, Epic Games, Activision Blizzard, Microsoft. They publish the game, and usually they will operate the league associated with the game. And some of these organizations, in order to make more money, they will ask organizations and teams to buy into their league. And really, it's these organizations that publish the game. They're the ones that make all the money. The teams are struggling to get by with player salaries and with lack of sponsorships at times. It's a really tricky spot. And therefore, it's going into a esports dark age in some sense. It used to exist. It's happened before when people get over ambitious, but it happened big time in about 2019, 2020. When there was all this money flooding in, thinking that esports was going to be like regular sports and paying back so much cash. Because, got to understand about esports, it's not working like regular sports, as in people go to the stadiums, they're paying season tickets. It doesn't operate like that. A lot of it's online. Or if there are games that are played in person, which there are plenty of times a year, you can sell tickets to stadiums, but it doesn't operate in the same way that a regular sport does. Players, sure, fans buy merchandise and stuff like this, but watching is free. We're not paying Sky Sports for... Sky Sports pay the teams and the league, Premier League, to broadcast their games, and people pay Sky Sports to have access to that. In esports, you watch on YouTube, you watch on Twitch. Nobody pays to watch it. So actually generating revenue from the fan base is very challenging. And, there's some deals that I've done that are probably worth similar or more than what some of the teams do. Because putting a logo a team's shirt just isn't really giving sponsors the rate of return that they need. So it does put esports in an interesting spot. I think it will be a big thing, and I'm continue to be very optimistic on the future in however many years. But it's been resting on a house of cards for some time, and we're starting to see venture capital groups that got effectively conned into buying in because they got told all this BS of how much it was going to grow that any of us who actually knew esports knew wasn't going to be the case. And some of them are starting to say, you know what, we're going to take the loss and get out of it. And then all the other ones are saying, well, shit, if they're doing this, then probably we should think about our involvement as well. And you start to find yourself in a pretty tricky spot where a lot of the organizations are looking to cut salaries or to just sell their spot entirely in the league. Because a lot of them are run on franchise models with no promotion relegation because they wanted to copy American sports for some reason, despite the fact that there's absolutely no reason why that should be the case. Esports is much more global than that. So as you can tell, I've got my frustrations with the way that esports is being handled from the top down. To be fair, part of what I'm hopefully trying to achieve is have a positive impact on that going forwards, that the scene can be much more sustainable. Also for the players in tier 2 and below, right? Because as you say, rightfully, there are negative effects on grinding Call of Duty or any other game so many hours a day compared to playing another sport so many hours a day. But if there was better support for the amateur circuit and growing to become a professional, that would be much less of a concern. So esports is far from perfect, and people, every time I talk about that I'm in esports, they say, oh, that like e-gaming thing, that's really big, you know, that I hear people talking, and I'm like, yeah, sure, like it is, you know, it is a big deal, but it has a lot of things it's got to solve. But there's a really passionate community, and some of the best fans that I know follow it. So
just think how new esports is as well, though. This is a problem. Like, it's like crypto when you see all these things going wrong in crypto. That is brand new. Crypto's as a concept is so new that it's got to figure things out. And I'm guessing esports is exactly the same. It's so new as a concept that it's got to slowly find its way and find its place. And not having that audience or like a platform like Sky Sports to pay the different teams is a big problem. But what you said before was like, we've got to look at what the kids are doing. If you look at how many kids are playing games all the time now and how popular video games are, there's going to be talent and enthusiasm and entrepreneurs that grow from that and create things. So I think we've got to realise that this is where society is going. Like, esports is going to be a big thing, and how can you help that and do it in a productive and healthy manner? Like, these kids that are playing 8 hours a day in Call of Duty, they should be educated on things they can do with their health alongside that, because it might actually be productive for them to play Call of Duty for 8 hours a day. That might be something they like to do, but they need, there's certain health implications that come with that. And I think people like you who are maybe leading the way can do a really good job in trying to promote a healthy message alongside that, and to get them to negate some of the negative side effects that come with it.
It's a really valuable perspective, because fundamentally someone playing COD 8 hours a day is doing not much different to what, you know, I might do, or people doing an office job. You know, they're sitting at a desk 8 hours a day. It's not much difference if you take care of yourself outside of that. And you'll see many players, especially the professional players that maintain the longest career, they're hitting the gym. They're taking their nutrition seriously. A lot of these organizations now are bringing in performance coaches, chefs. One of the Valorant teams, they have a personal chef for their team, does all their meals. Looks unbelievable, by the way. But like, this is what a lot of the teams are promoting, because they know that being in that head, it's not been talked about as much in esports as it deserves to be. How important being physically fit actually helps you play a lot better. But it is something that's getting more widely known, and it is something that players who are trying to make it are more aware of. So I think overall it's going to be a positive for the space. It's just a matter of how we get to that point, because as you say, esports is very young, and Call of Duty, for example, people started playing it on a competitive level in like 2006. Like, as soon as the game was here, people tried to play against each other somehow. but there was a competitive scene from around 2009 when like MLG, Major League Gaming, they got involved and they put it on the circuit and all this, and it started to go on the circuit really. I think there was other organisers before then, but like 2012, 2013, the big daddy, Activision Blizzard, they realised, all right, there's money in this from a marketing perspective. This is the other way that I view esports. It's like, it doesn't necessarily have to make money for the publisher because it's marketing, right? If you've got hundreds of thousands of people watching the Call of Duty World Championship and you put some sort of special custom thing in the game that they might want to buy because it looks cool, then, you know, does it really need to make you a load of money, Bobby Kotick? Or actually, is it a good marketing expense? And that's how they saw it. But it was 2013 that they started to actually commit some money. They put up $1 million for the World Championship. And then in 2016, they started the Call of Duty World League, which is looked back on quite fondly. But then they went one step further and they ruined it all, as far as I'm concerned. So it's like the people that were in the scene from the grassroots that had built this up from 2006, they understand how it works much better than the suits do that just see the bottom line. And I'm sure it's been the same way in sports over the years. I know there's all sorts of drama in, like, I have some interest in snooker. I like watching it, the big tournaments. And there's all sorts of drama in snooker as to the way that it's run, how many events there are in China. Like, there's always talk about this in every sport, about especially the sports that aren't like the big sports that have been consistent. But even in football, right? You're talking about the Super League and all this. Like, you know, it's not been every so often. There's always talk about this in sports, and it could always be done better. So I'll keep trying to push everything forwards.
As soon as money gets involved, there's politics that come along with it, and there's always people pushing their own agendas. You can't escape that. It's just the way. It's the way the need and the desire for money comes in, and it kind of plagues things. It stops things from being pure. But unfortunately, that's just the society we live in. Wherever there's going to be a chance to make money, there'll be people with bad intentions there trying to throw it their own way.
I couldn't have said it better, I think, Alex.
For sure. Well, Arran, actually, there's one thing I did want to talk about. What is your like health routine like? Because we were talking about the esports players and them looking after their health, and it's no similar to what you're doing. Really, you're sitting down for like 4 hours a day, smashing out work. So, what are you doing to keep your mind and your body healthy so you can be as productive as possible?
Yeah, for me, the number one thing I think is, I mean, there's a few options and they're all at the top of the list, but I would say nutrition has been 100% the biggest thing for me in feeling better. Sleep is definitely right up there, but and I focus on my sleep a lot nowadays, but even when my sleep isn't good, I still feel okay if my nutrition is down. Because when I was talking like 2018, right, I was a mess. I was getting up at like 4 p.m. My first meal would be dinner at the canteen. But I would swim some of those evenings. Like, me and my mate used to go swimming quite a lot during that time, and I enjoyed it. Like, but my life was still a mess, you know. Like, just because I was exercising, my life was still a mess. I think it was probably eating better that really, it just makes you feel good every day. So like, I wouldn't say I have too many supplements. I've gone back and forth on this whether I should have more or less, because some people would say, oh, you know, just have a few things. And generally I just eat well anyway, like chicken, beef, good mix of vegetables, track your calories reasonably enough, spinach, kale, all the good stuff. And I figured that out. But on top of that, then you've got your supplement stuff, so vitamin D, your fish oils, very good as far as I'm concerned, magnesium, zinc. There's another one, Alex, I don't know if you've tried this, but I started taking glycine recently. You heard of glycine?
I've never heard of glycine. Go on, enlighten me.
Yeah, so glycine is a amino acid that is most commonly found in animal organs. So liver, brain, heart, stuff like this. And if you're not eating liver, brain and heart, which I'm not really, I could probably eat liver. I know there's been talk on that, but glycine's a good one. So take 3 grams of it an hour before you go to bed, and it helps you sleep, first of all, and it's very good for you. but it also gives you, like, I typically don't dream much. Like, normally, I don't dream much. Every few days, maybe some interesting dreams. But every night, I'm getting vivid dreams from this glycine stuff, and it's really interesting. Not like crazy vivid, but like definitely it's a thing. So it's worth trying. It's really interesting. So I take that as well. The other thing is Athletic Greens, which is like a green smoothie thing, which just has all sorts of good stuff in. And I feel it's bad, really, that it has made as much impact as it has, because you'd think that eating a good diet with supplementation, stuff like this, like, should get you far enough. But still, Athletic Greens has definitely made impact on me. I'm like never ill. I mean, okay, I do cold showers and stuff in the mornings, but when I used to go to these events, when I went to a few of these events, like Call of Duty stuff in pre-pandemic 2019, and I would always get ill. There's this thing called land flu, where you go, and because there's 1,000 people there, plus over a few days that you're traveling, you're going to get ill. And everyone gets somewhat unwell, cold, whatever, they pick up at these events. And it happened to me when I went out there in 2019, and it kind of spoiled the weekend in some degree. But the two events that I went to this year, Boston and Toronto, like, I got all my nutrition locked in and my routine locked in, and I was fine. I didn't have any issues at all. Felt great the entire time I was there. I don't know the last time that I've not felt good. It's actually a superpower, Alex, I'm telling you. If you get your like nutrition locked down and you just test things out, see what works for you, obviously. But I mean, I used to just feel bad like every day, and I can't imagine I was getting anything good done. And obviously exercise is good, so I train like 4 times a week in the gym, something like that. I want to do more swimming, to be fair. But I was spoiled because, like, when you're pretty good at swimming in a 25-meter pool with a load of public people, it just ain't gonna cut it. You know what I mean? Like, they're too slow. Get out the way. Like, when I was at uni, we had a 50-meter Olympic pool, so I'd be banging up and down in that. And you go at like 8 p.m. at night, 9 p.m. at night, last people in there, I'd have a whole 50-meter lane to myself. Beautiful. And it's just not quite the same when you don't have that. So I need to do a little bit more of that.
I'd be completely gassed out.
Yeah, I'd say nutrition's the number one thing.
Yeah, I'd be completely gassed out doing 50 metres of a pool, Arran. Like, that would be me gone for a couple of hours. Like, swimming is like the hardest cardio you can do. I think it was really important, and I've literally written that glycine down because when we was evolving, as you were saying, like, we were eating organs from animals. We were eating the brain. We were eating literally the whole animal. And there's a lot of nutrients that we're missing out on from not eating like a whole animal. So, yeah, I'll definitely look into that. It was glycine, right?
Yeah, glycine with an I. Glycine. You want to 3 grams an hour before bed is what my mate tells me, who knows about this stuff.
Perfect.
So,
well,
that's
Arran,
my recommendation to try.
Arran, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, mate. I think that was really interesting for me to kind of like dig into your story, and I was just really interested in how you like stay so productive and how you've like, mate, from going from 0 to 100k subscribers, regardless of who's done it or what, it's a massive achievement for people. And to see you put in the work consistently, and you've been doing it for 5 years, mate, and you've replicated it over different channels, it's really admirable, mate. And I think just the person you are, you're a big inspiration for me to like head towards. So yeah, I appreciate everything you do, mate.
I appreciate it. I mean, same likewise. There's a lot of ways in your life that you're ahead of the curve that I'm at, and the other way around. So that's what relationships are all about. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. I'm hoping and I'm looking forward to listening to some of these with future guests, and when this channel gets to the heights that it will get to, then we'll be there having a steak to celebrate, you know.
For sure, Arran, mate. I really appreciate you coming on, dude, and I'll see you in Manchester at some point soon.
Absolutely, yes. That'll be good.
All right, thanks, Arran.
I hope everyone enjoyed.